It's the Fellowship of the Geek Show, a weekly podcast about comics, the comic book industry, and other geek pop culture. Music courtesy of Manny the Martyr. And now, on with the show!
Hey there, everybody. It's a special edition of Fellowship of the Geeks podcast. My name is Thomas Chick, and joining me for this episode is Mike Marlowe.
Hey, gang.
Les Webster.
Hello, all.
And Liz Newman.
Hello, everybody.
How are you guys doing?
Yeah.
Pumped.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Bow, bow.
Bum, 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 bum. Oh, yeah.
Now I want a Twix.
A right or a left?
Always left.
Because left is right and right is wrong.
Right? Yep.
Dogs and cats living together in mass hysteria. Anyway, like I said, this is a special edition of the Fellowship of the Geeks podcast. We have a special guest with us today, David Pepose, who's here to talk about his new Kickstarter, the OZ. And, of course, we talk a little bit about his previous books, Spencer and Locke, and Going to the Chapel, and a few other things that are going on in his life and in the comic industry. It was a real fun interview. Without further ado, here's that interview.
Sunday night, a little punchy. I'm excited. So yeah, let's talk some comics.
Well, it's not like you have any reason to be excited. I mean, holy crap! I'm looking at the Kickstarter numbers right now. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my god! So
Yeah. I couldn't be more excited. We're hoping to break 900 probably by Tuesday. 900 backers. So we're well on our way to our 1,000 reader goal that I set for myself. Yeah, it's I couldn't be more blown away. I couldn't be more grateful. This book's been in the works for a long time, and it's but to see the world kind of responding to it, it means a lot.
why don't you go ahead and kind of explain the origins of the OZ and what the story is about?
Yeah, sure. Well, so the OZ is kind of like what if Mad Max and the Hurt Locker took place in the Wizard of Oz. We've kind of reframed Dorothy Gale killing the Wicked Witch of the West as something more like a botched regime change. And so when she clicked her heels together 3 times and went back to Kansas, she inadvertently left Oz in a power vacuum that has sent the country spiraling into years of brutal civil war. So our book picks up a generation later with Dorothy's granddaughter and namesake, who is a disillusioned Iraq war veteran. She's come back home from her time overseas with some real trauma, some real guilt, some real scars, and she's trying to put the pieces of her life back together in small-town Kansas. Unfortunately, when a tornado strikes, this new Dorothy is going to find herself trapped in the war-torn land of Oz. So she's going to have to really confront her past and her grandmother's legacy, not to mention navigate her grandmother's former friends, if she hopes to survive the occupied zone, or as the locals call it, the OZ.
Nice. Is this going to be like an ongoing book, or is this kind of is this a determined length of issues?
So this is going to be the first of 3 Kickstarter campaigns that'll wrap up our standalone first arc. And once that wraps, then we'll kind of determine, what the demand is and what our bandwidth is. I always write stories with an idea in my back pocket just in case. And, based on the first 2 weeks, our reaction has been pretty incredible for this book. So I say never say never. Ruben and I are already talking about kind of what's next for us after this series. Whether it's more of this series or something else. But I initially wrote the OZ as 6 standard-sized issues. And part of the reason I felt emboldened to try Kickstarter was I realized that arc fit nicely in a 3-act structure. So I was able to package each of these issues as double-sized, sort of give our Kickstarter readers more bang for their buck, and also not have me do a nervous breakdown with 6 Kickstarter campaigns. So we've got a set beginning, middle, and end, but just like Spencer and Locke, there's room for more if we decide to tell it, and if readers demand it.
Sure. Very nice.
Yep.
So where did the idea for the OZ come from?
Good question. How it happened for me. So like I said, this book has been in the works for a very long time. This was one of the first 3 ideas I came up with after the first volume of Spencer and Locke came out. And, in retrospect, a lot of people are like, oh, why didn't you have more ideas ready after Spencer and Locke? And, I didn't know if I was going to get to do another book after Spencer and Locke. That's a combustible high concept. What if Calvin and Hobbes grew up in Sin City? And, I was, I had just as likely of getting run out of the industry for that book as I did anything else. So when the smoke kind of cleared and I realized, oh, people like that book, that it really meant something to them, I said, oh, okay, maybe I can come up with some new ideas. And so one of them was Spencer and Locke 2, which I had in my back pocket from the jump. Go into the chapel because I was the world's worst best man at my oldest friend's wedding. And then last but not least, I'd come up with the OZ. And how that happened was I really wanted to try different genres. That's the thing I love most about comics is I'm not wedded to any particular one genre. So I had done crime, I had done romance, and I said, what's kind of a big swing of a title? And I thought sci-fi or fantasy. Now, I've since written sci-fi books, but at the time, sci-fi was really hard for me. It still is really hard for me. It doesn't play to my natural strengths, where you got to come up with these really hard and fast rules that the world operates around. Whereas fantasy, there's so much metaphor and characterization that the world can kind of warp around that. You've got that wiggle room in the world of magic. So I've always gravitated to that, and so I wrote. I opened up a Google Doc and I was writing down different inspirations. I wrote down Lord of the Rings, or Lord of the Rings, or Lloyd Alexander, or Piers Anthony, or Harry Potter, The Wizard of Oz. And as my cursor was kind of flashing on the word Oz, it kind of hit me that I was like, oh, that word's so short and iconic. It could be an acronym for something. And I then thought, oh, like DMZ. And then I thought, oh, the occupied zone. And that's when the light bulb kind of really went off. And I was like, oh, this isn't just a fantasy book. It's a war story. I really had this image that kind of hit me like lightning. And Ruben Rojas channeled it eerily well on our main cover. But, of Dorothy, staring at us as this haunted, disillusioned soldier. And the Tin Man standing behind her is this kind of towering war machine who's been destroyed and rebuilt with whatever scrap metal is around. It felt like a really compelling story, and one that felt supported by the source material. It's something that really, was important to me with Spencer and Locke, is that we weren't just doing shock for shock value's sake, that the source material supported it, and that we were able to have like an actual core of human emotion and heart and characterization at the middle. I mean, it'd be very easy for somebody to say, oh, let's do a story about like Elmo, cooking meth and Oscar the Grouch's trash can or whatever. But like, there's nothing really in the source material that like supports that.
Wait, quickly write that down before you forget it.
Breaking Elmo.
Breaking Elmo.
The count is mad that he's not getting all of his money. If you only 1, 2, 3 stacks. Got some Sunday night punchiness. But the thing is like that's funny at like the jump while we're riffing on it, but like there's nothing to bring you back for a second installment. It's just shock for shock value's sake. Mm-hmm. And that's not how I roll. I want to make sure that like everybody will look at a car accident once. Nobody comes back for seconds. So I always think that it's important that the source material supports it. And having read the L. Frank Baum novels, I read them in college for a term paper. In adolescent literature, I read about how Baum had built a prototypical superhero universe decades before Stan and Jack ever showed up on the scene, because he was building on continuity mythology over 20 novels. But the thing is, if you've read the original Wizard of Oz, or if you've watched the Judy Garland film, which is kind of cultural osmosis at this point, Dorothy kills the Wicked Witch and then splits, and then they try to wrap it up with a neat little bow. But that's not really how it works. You've knocked down like a major power player. The Wizards left. It's that's going to look more like Baghdad. That's going to look more like Game of Thrones. And that's why, I thought it was so important to have, our main character be a soldier, be someone who has seen this happen before. As someone who grew up during the invasion of Iraq, I was in high school. I think I was a sophomore in high school. The parallels always really stood out to me, and it made me feel like there was something to this story because the original source material supported it.
I like it.
Thank you.
That's very strong.
It is.
Yeah, it is.
It is a beautiful cover too.
Yeah, I mean, I'm working with like a real murderer's row of talent on this book. Ruben Rojas is, Ruben and I connected in 2018, which just kind of goes how long just goes to show you how long this book's been in development. And he was answering a call for artists on Twitter, and I was immediately blown away by just how talented he was. He's got a style that's kind of like if Dan Mora and Sean Murphy had a baby. He's really able to turn on a dime with these like awesome action sequences to something that's really moody and emotional. But Ruben's also one of the most gifted designers I've ever worked with. He really lends so much in terms of detail for the setting of Oz and the various locations that we go to, but also all of our characters. Usually with most artists, I work on pitch pages with them. I usually do 6 pages in a cover just to make sure that it's a good fit, to make sure that, we feel simpatico, that we have enough to show a publisher. And I saw Ruben's cover, which is what you guys are all seeing on the Kickstarter right now. And I was just so blown away by his take on the Tin Soldier that I said, Ruben, keep drawing, because I promise you, come hell or high water, I will get this book made. That's just, when you work with Ruben Rojas, that's the kind of faith you have. And then we brought together colorist Whitney Kogar from the Eisner Award-winning Giant Days, D.C. Hopkins from And World Designs. They were both recommended to me by my pal Michael Mocchio, who I was his editor at Newsarama when he was still in college, and he's gone on to do such incredible things. He was an assistant editor over at Boom Studios. He's over at Scholastic. He's doing work over at Mad Cave. But I've always felt a sense of pride and ownership over Michael's meteoric trajectory. So he and I, we keep in contact all the time. When he was at Boom, I was just down the street from Boom, so I'd buy him dinner. And he really recommended, he was like, Whitney Kogar and D.C. Hopkins are terrific. So I met D.C. shortly thereafter at Denver Comic-Con, and we just hit it off like a house on fire. He's so good-natured and gracious and generous as a collaborator. He really he's very considerate about how his work interacts with everybody else's. And he's such just a much-needed center of calm in what can be otherwise a fairly chaotic process of making comics. Whitney was the last member to join the team, and she's kind of our secret weapon. This is very unlike anything she's done before with Giant Days, but it's just incredible. Whitney and I talked a lot about what's the Star Wars version of Mad Max look like. Kind of you still have that grittiness and that intensity, but you also have that sense of scope and scale and wonder. The land of Oz has teeth now, but thanks to Whitney, it just because it's dangerous doesn't mean it isn't beautiful. She lends so much energy to the mix, and I think it really speaks to the way that I was trained when I was first starting out in the business. I was as an intern at DC, and they told me that art makes or breaks your comic, but colors make or break your art. And so And what's great about working with that team is that we really we're all in this positive feedback loop. I saw Ruben's inks, and so I shotgunned through 140 pages of script because I was just so excited to see what he did. And then as he saw scripts coming in, he got more excited. Whitney would see Ruben's inks and get really excited, knock her colors out, and then Ruben would get even more excited seeing those colors. And then I would get more excited seeing DC Hopkins letters on everything. So we're really kind of all our own biggest cheerleaders. It's a really wonderful dynamic, and I think it yields some really kind of A+ work. It's one of those things, like, I think I'm decent at writing. I practice, but I do think it just in terms of visuals alone, the OZ stands toe to toe with anything else the direct market can offer. These are some superstars in the making, and I couldn't be more grateful to be collaborating with them.
These are very impressive pages that I'm seeing here on the Kickstarter.
And this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah. Oh. I mean, every page is beautiful.
It's hard not to be confident when you're working with Ruben Rojas and Whitney Kogart. It's actually very liberating for me as a writer, because I know that at the end of the day, the worst possible reviews we get are still going to say the art is good. So it's great for me. They give me plenty of cover, so no complaints there.
So how long did it take you to come up with that theme song?
Oh man, so that was pretty spur of the moment, and that's what happens when one of your best friends is a comics geek and a musician. So yeah, I guess this is a good way to say, our Kickstarter, you don't really plan for the level of overshoot that we hit. The night 2 weeks ago today, I was having like a panic attack, thinking like, okay, is this Kickstarter going to work? Are we going to cross 6,000 in 30 days? Am I going to make enough to at least recoup my art costs, if not the printing costs? And then we got funded in 2 hours, and suddenly like my whole plan exploded. It's like going out for a sandwich and winding up on the moon. Like nobody really like it would be the height of hubris to expect this level of overshoot. And so it's been kind of like coming up with a plan on the fly, trying to think of new stretch goals, thinking of ways to just add more value to the book, because I never want anybody to think like, oh, this is a cash grab. Quite the opposite. The money that we're getting here is going towards the next 2 issues. I'm not getting rich off this book. I'm literally going to be recouping my costs. That's how expensive a 6-issue miniseries is. So it's how do we keep adding value? Yeah. So the great thing about Kickstarters, it's kind of your imagination and your shipping structure is the limit. You kind of get to figure out like, okay, what can I do that isn't going to blow up the shipping costs and isn't going to delay the book? So you think of things that you can either distribute digitally, or you can fit into your Gemini mailers, or that you can use to enhance the book itself without dragging your heels too long. And so one of the things I had thought was when Spencer and Locke came out, one of my favorite things that happened was we got a wrap review of our first issue, and it's still up on YouTube if you want to listen to it. It's I was very touched. It was a bucket list item I didn't know I had. But I thought, oh man, like having a song for the OZ would be pretty cool. And so George Marston is one of my best friends. We came up the trenches together at Newsarama. We've been friends for the better part of a decade. I think it'll be 10 years in probably the next year or so. And so I brought up to him thinking, hey, it'd be really cool if I did a song. And he was like, I was just thinking about writing a song. And, I was thinking about the OZ. Would you want to do a song? So he knocked out those lyrics in, I think, 24 hours. And he recorded the song. He recorded it, I think, in like that week. I had heard a rough demo of it when I posted our first social stretch goal. But I didn't hear the full completed mix until later that night, where it was becoming very clear that we were going to be unlocking this thing the next morning. And yeah, I was so blown away. George really nailed the tone and temperature and feeling of the OZ, which makes sense because, I've been bouncing this book off of him for years now. And so, yeah, I couldn't be more pleased with what George did. I couldn't be more touched. That I think it was kind of one of the greatest gifts he's given me as a friend. And yeah, it's actually his birthday today. So happy birthday, George. Thanks again for an amazing song. And yeah, I mean, just hearing how fans have reacted to it, I think it's something pretty special.
Yeah, you had to be blown away to already hit your goal within the first couple hours to go live. Because I remember when I realized it was open, and I've already contributed. I came over here and went, oh my God, it's already hit the goal. Holy crap.
Yeah, I mean, nobody was more surprised than me. And, I think there are a lot of things that contributed to that. I mean, some of it is just, I think people really responded to the artwork and the concept. I think this is a very universal concept, perhaps even more so than Spencer and Locke. I think there's a set generation that knows and respects Calvin and Hobbes, but once you hit a certain age range, like, younger kids in like high school, for example, won't get it. Even kids in college might not get it at this point. Wizard of Oz is cultural osmosis. And I think there are fantasy fans. There are people who are fans of the Wizard of Oz. There are people who, have come in from my previous books. I think another advantage that we had that we kind of caught lightning in a bottle is we launched it on the same day as Scott Snyder. And, it just goes to show how Kickstarter and the direct market are just different planets with different laws of physics. In that, if Scott had pulled a Beyonce and dropped Noctera in the direct market on the same day as a release that I had, I'd be dead in the water, because shops have a limited amount of bandwidth, they have a limited amount of shelf space, they have to pay money to take a risk on your book. And so, if the calculus comes down between the guy who wrote Batman and the guy who wrote Spencer and Locke, like, of course you're going to pick the guy who wrote Batman. You got bills to pay. Kickstarter, on the other hand, a rising tide truly floats all boats. Kickstarter wants to keep, they want to keep you in the ecosystem. They, they want all the projects to fund because that's how they get their cut.
Right.
And so, so many people joined Kickstarter the day that our project launched because of Scott. And then Kickstarter said, hey, by the way, there's a new book that has also come out, and the OZ happened to be next in line. And so thankfully, I'm grateful. I caught wind that Scott was going to be launching a Kickstarter the same day that I was. I think it was a few days before our Kickstarter launch. So I had a moment to like panic attack and then realized, no, this is a good thing. But I remember Scott and I were talking the night before our Kickstarters launched. We were talking about the OZ. He's been a huge supporter of the book for a long time. And he was talking about a pull quote that he's going to give us on the book. And he said, hey, I'm sorry that I've been behind schedule. It's just things, are crazy, everything going on at DC, and I'm launching my Kickstarter tomorrow. And I was like, yeah, we're going to be Kickstarter twins. But I really do feel like we had the strongest possible wind at our backs. I think the day we launched was probably the single best day to launch a Kickstarter project in months. And I think Scott was a big part of that.
Yeah, now that I think about it, I wonder if maybe all of the weirdness with DC is maybe starting to drive people into something like Kickstarter a little more than it would have before.
Yeah, I certainly think really, COVID shutting down conventions, shutting down Diamond temporarily. I think that was a real sea change for a lot of people. I certainly know that it kind of made me rethink how I'm doing business. I mean, that's part of the reason why the OZ is on Kickstarter, is that I've been looking to do Kickstarter for the better part of a year. I'm friends with people like Charlie Stickney, the creator of White Ash, which is I consider the original comics Kickstarter success story. My buddy Rylan Grant just wrapped his Kickstarter for his book The Jump. Pat Shand with Destiny New York and its spin-off titles, Russell Nahelty and Ichabod Jones and his veritable laundry list of other Kickstarter projects. There are a lot of creators out here in Los Angeles in particular that have all had success on Kickstarter, and I've signed with them. I'm friendly with many of them, and they've all been saying you should really do a Kickstarter. And the thing that kind of tipped me over the net was somebody, was either Charlie or Russell. I apologize for not attributing it correctly, but one of them said, there's certain people that buy their books primarily at comic shops, and there's certain people that buy their books primarily on Amazon or Comixology, and certain people who buy their books primarily at cons, which is where I've been particularly successful. Well, there are people who buy their books primarily on Kickstarter, and I realized, that's a whole demographic that I've done zero outreach to. I probably should do that. And between that and traditional publishers, even in the best of times, acquisitions can be chaotic. People's attention gets diverted, people get buried in work, other bigger creators pitch in books. So we had publishers expressing interest in the OZ, and then they'd get distracted. And then we'd start the conversation all over again. And it'd be, it was like Groundhog Day. It was all positive conversations, but it would be like, hey, we really like this book. And I'd be like, great. If you want it, let's talk a contract. And they'd be like, yeah, give us a couple weeks. We'll get right on it. And then we'd start the process all over again.
Man, that's gotta get old, doesn't it?
But that's just the name of the game, it happens, But when COVID hit, and especially with the Diamond shutdown, I realized, we could just solve one problem with another. We can give the OZ a home. We had 2 issues fully written and drawn at that point. So it was burning a hole in my pocket. And we could introduce ourselves to the Kickstarter audience with our absolute A game. And seeing kind of the overwhelming reaction to the book, it feels like a leap of faith rewarded.
Okay, so you've mentioned Spencer and Locke a couple of times.
Sure.
And since it's been a little while since we've talked, I feel semi-obligated to ask.
Where's Volume 3? I'm working on it.
That was actually not where I was going, but that's a good point. We'll put a pin in that.
I'm working on it, I swear. What was the question? Hit me.
I believe you. Any word on the movie?
So there's a lot that I can't talk about because of NDAs.
That's awesome. That's actually good news.
Good thing. The thing is, LA and Hollywood have certainly been disrupted because of COVID. There's a lot of things on pause right now. So we're in a little bit of a holding pattern at the moment, just until kind of the pandemic settles down. Yeah, I mean, the people that we've been talking with and the people we've been working with, I'm very excited about. I wish that I was allowed to say stuff. That's ultimately their call to say stuff. But yeah, it's been good things. I mean, look, everything's very chaotic right now just because like Hollywood in the best of times is chaotic. And then you add COVID to the mix and like everything is kind of on hold. But, I feel good, and it's one of those things when this Kickstarter wraps, because I've been so underwater with that and some other pressing work. That's sort of the next thing on my agenda is just to be like, yo, what's up? What's the haps? But yeah, so far so good. It's a weird time in Hollywood for everything else right now.
Right. And right now is not probably even really the best. I mean, although this is our opportunity to ask you the question, it's kind of a weird time to ask the question because.
No. It's a totally fair and good question. It's very much, it's sort of everything's TBD. But the people we have been working with, I'm pretty enthused about. So yes, hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll have more news to share sooner rather than later.
Good, because some of us are waiting patiently for that.
Me too. No, that's the hardest thing about being a comics person in Hollywood. And I think I got spoiled very early by the fact that we got our option announced at the jump. Because since then, I have come to learn that there can be all sorts of progress made that you can't talk about, because it's ultimately their call to make announcements. And so, yeah, it's, it burns a little, having to keep secrets and not be able to say everything.
Well, yeah, but the
It's
upside
fully
there.
in service of the book and the final product.
Right.
But yes.
And the upside is that there's progress. If there's progress being made, I mean, the vast majority of properties that get optioned like that, there's no progress ever.
Yeah.
And so that there's anything going on is great news, honestly.
Yeah, exactly. Especially, for my first book.
Right.
It's very exciting. But yeah, fingers crossed that, we might have some cool stuff down the road.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
It is.
Well, since we've already mentioned Spencer Locke and Going to the Chapel's already been mentioned as well,
Yeah.
Congratulations on the Ringo Award nominations.
Thank you. I couldn't be more grateful. This has been a weird 2 weeks. I already was kind of like feeling pretty overstimulated with the Kickstarter. I'm working crazy hours. I'm really kind of pushing pedal to the metal, and I'm really grateful that I had happened to take. I basically blocked out that Wednesday. I had some phone calls that I had to make, so I kind of tamped down on my podcast marathon that day. And so yeah, I got up, in the morning, went to use the restroom, and as I'm sort of looking at my phone in the dark while I'm doing all this, I see my Twitter start to blow up, and my friend Danny Lore, they were saying, "Oh, you got a dope Kickstarter, now you got these dope Ringo Awards." And suddenly my hands start shaking, and I'm like, "What?" And so, yeah, it's one of those things, like, you're kind of hoping that, like, maybe one of the books gets in. The fact that both of them get in is, I couldn't be more ecstatic. It just goes to show that, like, people really responded to both of those books in a positive way. And it also makes me feel pretty good about everybody that turned down Chapel. All the peoples that said, well, we don't know how to sell a rom-com. Now I can say, well, how can you sell an award-nominated rom-com? So if there's any comics creators listening, we'd love it if you voted for Spencer and Locke 2 for Best Single Issue, and Going to the Chapel for Best Presentation and Design. But yeah, it's cliche, but it's an honor just to be nominated. I'm really excited to probably lose to Stan Sakai or Mark Russell or David Walker. But, just to be on the same ballot with these guys is a huge honor. And, and one that I hope will open more doors for my career moving forward.
Right. Yeah, I saw the nominations and I started reading through. I'm like, oh God, this is a tough list.
It's a tough
list. I'm going through it, and then I got to Best Single Issue or Story, and Spencer Locke 2 #1 was like the first one or second one listed. I'm like, holy crap!
Yeah.
Yes.
Is that awesome or what?
It was. I was pretty excited. 'Cause especially, every first issue is a little bit of a risk. I felt like Spencer and Locke 2, like, it felt like a risk, just to be like, oh man, okay, I want to make sure that people, they ask for a sequel. I want to make sure we justify it. And I felt like that issue in particular, I loved the whole series, but I felt like that first issue, we left it all in the field. And the fact that we are up there with Bitter Root and Second Coming, I couldn't be more blown away. It definitely felt like the simulation was glitching that day. I was definitely, I kind of spent that whole day just being like, oh boy, this is a day. But you spend your whole life loving comics, and a day like that where we got 2 Ringo nominations and crossed 500% on a Kickstarter, it kind of feels like comics love you back. And you don't get a whole lot of days like that, so I'm certainly going to be treasuring it for the rest of my career.
Well, they're well deserved.
They are.
Indeed.
Thank you. I'm gonna remember you said that when my imposter syndrome comes back in like 2 weeks.
Hey, this episode will be up long before that. You can listen back to it anytime you need to.
Oh, it's gonna be my. It's gonna be my my alarm. So yes. So thank you for the kind words, because it's, I mean, I came from the comics journalism scene, and I'm sure you guys feel this way in the podcast scene. Is that like sometimes you do the work and you're kind of like, is this thing on? Like, is anybody listening to this? Is this resonating with anybody?
Yeah, we gave up on that a long time ago here.
But it's when you see real tangible signs like that, it kind of makes you feel like, oh, maybe I got a shot at this. It's just, it feels like, you take that leap of faith, especially when you get into this business, and the fact that you can kind of stick the landing, you're like, oh, okay, I feel really grateful for that.
Yeah. So speaking of podcasts, how many podcasts have you done so far in the last few weeks?
Oh boy, I've done a lot. I think by end of this week, I'll have done 50.
Is that all? I mean, come on.
Is that it? Yeah. Yeah, I've done. Let's see. I've got my calendar up in front of me right now. Let's see.
That's barely 2 a day during the Kickstarter campaign. Come on now.
Yeah. Well, for me, I'm the idiot who tends to stack these things. And so
you're not the only one, man. Believe me.
Yeah. So today was a light day. This is only my second for today. I did 1. Let's see. 2. Oh God. 3. Let's see. 4, 5, 6, 7.
You didn't really have to count me. I was kind of kidding.
Now I want to know. Jesus. Whew, boy, that is a lot.
It's okay to just call it a lot. It's fine.
But it's super fun. Right. I mean, I like, first off, again, like, as somebody who came up in the comics journalism scene, like, game respects game. And also, I think we've talked about this in the past, but I always consider it a writer's responsibility to promote their team. Mm-hmm. I like, my job is the easiest out of everybody's. The injury that I can get in this job is if I step off the couch funny. Whereas, Ruben, if I tax him to, already blows out his wrist and it's a career ender for him. So also, I've never met, besides Joe Mulvey, an extroverted artist before. Joe Mulvey and Hoyt Silva actually are the only two that I've ever met. Most artists I've ever worked with, they're kind of introverts. They keep to themselves because they got to be working all hours of the day. So I consider it my responsibility as the writer and kind of the team leader to pound the pavement to make sure that, Ruben and Whitney and DC's superlative work is being talked about and being seen. This kind of comes back to I worked at CBS in New York for a few years. I worked in corporate, and I worked with their publicity teams a lot. Mm-hmm. And I was in charge of writing ratings releases every day. And so I worked with our research department a lot. And the thing that they really taught me was, shows like, I don't know, CSI, pretty boilerplate. Or a better example is Big Bang Theory. Okay. Not exactly the most, like, highbrow comedy out there, but it was the number one comedy on television for a very long time. And that's when I realized that some of that has to do with accessibility. You can watch any episode of the Big Bang Theory and know what you're getting yourself into. But more importantly, it's how they marketed it. It's the time slot they put it in. It's other shows that they used as lead-ins to sort of build that audience trust. It's what were they going up against from other networks. You can write the best comic or TV show or what have you on the planet, and it's not going to necessarily sell itself. It's not going to mean anything if nobody's heard of it. So that's sort of, the concern that I always have, and that's why I always try to really pound the pavement pretty hard. And the thing about podcasts in particular, I love print, of course. It's certainly simpler for me to just dash off a couple of answers, but podcasts are about investment. The people who listen to your show, they're coming in week after week, and they believe what you have to say. They trust your opinion. The fact that you trust that you believe in me enough to have me on your show, I think speaks volumes. And so I really do believe in podcasts and video casts just as much as print, perhaps even in a very different dimension. Because like I feel like if even one of your listeners hears about the OZ and picks it up as a result, I consider this time to be well spent. And even if they don't, getting able to catch up with you guys and getting to sort of keep you guys up to speed on what I'm working on, it feels like the only natural way to sort of build that platform for future books and down the line in my career. I think that's the thing that a lot of people don't get about the comics industry. So much of it's based on relationships, and you can't build a relationship organically overnight. It takes time. And so that's why, I always say I remember where I came from. The fact that you guys chatted with me about Spencer and Locke and going to the chapel when I did not really have much of a track record, it speaks volumes to me. And so I always want to make sure that I come back and tell you what's new.
Well, thank you.
And we're happy to have you, man.
Thank you.
Yeah,
We are,
definitely. Yeah.
Now, Mikey beforehand has mentioned your newsletter a couple of times.
Yeah, Pep Talks.
Yeah.
Well, first off, you should definitely sign up for Pep Talks, my newsletter. I send it out every 3 weeks. I gotta check the calendar. I don't remember if tomorrow is the next newsletter or if it's the following week. I've been told from for a while that like doing a newsletter is a really great way of communicating directly with your readership. And so for the last year I've had a newsletter called Pep Talks. I tease projects that I'm working on. It's a nice way for me to sort of give our most dedicated fans kind of a behind the scenes look without kind of spoiling the reveal. The OZ has been referred to as Project Saffron for the better part of a year, and I've been showing little teasers and bits and pieces there. So if you want the inside scoop of what I'm working on, you should definitely subscribe to Pep Talks. It's at bit.ly/Pep News. It's fun. It keeps me accountable as well. Because I'm like, I have to keep writing because otherwise I'm going to have to confess to my newsletter readers that I have not written anything. It keeps me on the straight and narrow. It's also like a nice communication with my friends and family to let them know I'm still alive. It's fun. It's something that I think more creators should be doing, just to kind of have a more direct line of communication with their fans.
Well, we were talking about the other night, and we do appreciate you do that. And you're one of those that has been very consistent about putting them out, and that's much appreciated. That keeps us kind of in the loop of what's going on, so we know that, hey, if the next book's coming out, we have an idea or what you may be working on right now. So it's very much appreciated.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I mean, it's plus, it's kind of fun. I mean, when I was growing up, we had Wizard magazine, and then eventually we had sites like Newsarama and CBR and Comics Alliance and Comic Book and The Beat and what have you. So for me, I've always been a process junkie. I've always really appreciated kind of demystifying the process of comics, and also, and I think this kind of ties in with Kickstarter a little bit. I want my readers to feel invested in my work and sort of giving them a little peek behind the curtain. It's a way to sort of establish that bond. I feel like Stan Lee was always really good at that, where he was sort of like, he was kind of like your cool, grandpa, sort of being like, hey, you want to see something cool? Let me show you. The phrase, hey, do you want to see something cool? I've never heard anybody be like, no, I don't want to see something cool. And I think that's something that's like really important. It's a fun bond to have with your readership.
So is there some significance to the fact that all of your project names are food related?
I mean, that's my priority. I'm a growing boy who loves his food. Yeah, it's funny. I mean, some of them. Right now, a lot of them have either been food related or color related. Um, Project Saffron kind of being in the middle there. That was based on Saffron Yellow for the Yellow Brick Road.
Right.
Going to the Chapel was Project Cake. Spencer and Locke was Project Cerulean. I've got a few other projects. Some of it's just to kind of keep readers on their toes now. I think now readers are starting to be like, oh, there was significance to that. Some of them will be, some of them won't. Some of them are just inside jokes. Some of them, for example, I'm working on a superhero one-shot with my Spencer and Locke cohort, Jorge Santiago Jr. Just, a character I've had in the back of my mind for a long time that I've this was we found an opportunity to put that out. And it's called Project Juniper. And there's really nothing special about that. It's just one of the characters' names is Juniper. But I if that's what gets you reading my newsletter is to look at the tea leaves, I'm fine with that. A little mystique goes a long way. I've found in the promotional game.
Right, and seeing it builds that you're talking about, that inside joke thing.
Yeah.
Something like this, it lets us build that. I mean, even if it's in our own heads, and you ain't got nothing to do with it. It's just a name you keep throwing out there. I mean, it still lets us kind of play with the ideas, and it makes it fun.
And some of it's just like, me thinking about food that I like.
Mm-hmm.
I got Project Tagalong. That's my favorite cookie.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very unofficial. Like I'm working on something right now, Project Honeycrisp. That I'm still not in love with that project name. But I was like, I need a type of produce. And that was kind of what I got. But yeah, sometimes they change. And sometimes I forget the project names, which is never fun. That kind of kills the mystique a little. But yeah, it's my way of having my cake and eating it too, is that I can tell you guys what I'm working on without kind of blowing the reveal, especially if I'm working with an outside publisher who might get mad at me
right.
for
you don't want to get in trouble.
said review.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Les, you've been kind of quiet. You have anything?
I'm taking it all in, and I'm being engrossed by this. It's just fun stuff.
Thank you. I mean, it's like that's the whole thing about, I'm sure for comics podcasts and comics journalism and then going on to be a comics creator, it's nobody does this to get rich. I was on a podcast or I should say a panel for a digital convention the other night, and they asked everybody on there why they did comics, and they got to me last, and I said, well, I'd probably join the industry for the same reason as everybody else, which is the money, respect, and job security. Nobody's doing this to get rich. Nobody's getting rich off of anything. We do it for love of the game, and you sort of get a little bit of that inside baseball. You get to kind of talk about like the process behind everything, and then you get to talk about like what your influences were, what your favorite books were, who your favorite creators are. And at the end of the day, like, we're in a fairly contentious industry. A sense of a healthy dose of perspective is probably not something that we have in our industry of capes and tights and underwear on the outside. But I feel like when we're able to sort of recall why we're here in the first place, sort of that shared love, that shared fandom, it's hard not to feel like a kid again. It's hard not to feel excited, and it's hard, it's sort of what gets me out of bed every day is, I love comics. I don't always love what's going on in comics. I don't always love the comics I read, but I love comics as a medium, as an art form, as an industry, as a community. And so, yeah, I think that's part of the reason, going back to your earlier question about, why so many podcasts, I can't get enough about talking about this stuff. I feel like this is sort of my calling. And I love being a comics evangelist, because at the end of the day, I'm not looking to just preach to the choir. I want converts.
Very poignant statement right there. I like that.
Well,
It's my motto.
and if the numbers from the OZ are any indicator, seems like you're getting them.
Yeah, I mean that's always been my watchword for all my books is accessibility. People ask me a lot about how deep are you digging into Baum's Oz mythology, and like I said, I've read most of the Oz novels for homework, in college. And my answer is always we kind of got to thread that needle of what's most accessible to the readership. Everybody knows the Judy Garland film, although the Judy Garland film is not actually considered public domain, unlike the novels. So that core quartet is obviously going to be the big focus. But we're able to fit in little Easter eggs and side characters that are from sort of the more extended mythology. It's things like the Deadly Desert, for example, or the mountaintops of Ix. The sort of Baum's extended Oz mythology. We're able to put it in with mainstays like the Emerald City or the Wicked Witch's Castle to sort of really lend that variety of setting to our story. I talked about Mad Max and Star Wars, and the reason for that is, Star Wars, part of the scale of it all is based on its sweeping locations. You've got Dagobah, you've got Tatooine, you've got Hoth, you've got Cloud City, you've got the trenches of the Death Star. They all have their own kind of unique vibe and their own internal high concept and their own individual palettes. As soon as you're there, that there are going to be different hazards and obstacles to explore. And we're doing the same thing in the OZ. And I think having kind of that extended mythology is helpful to us. But at the end of the day, my mission is, again, I want to be able to offer this comic to a stranger. I want to be able to offer this comic to somebody who's never read a comic before and have them get on board and get invested and get excited. I miss conventions in part because I would regularly sell books to people who said they didn't read comics. And my response has always been, everybody has a favorite comic, they just don't know what it is yet. Just like everybody's got a favorite TV show, a favorite movie, a favorite food. The one problem that our industry has, and I understand why we've gotten ourselves there, there are certain compromises and changes and initiatives that we had to take in order to survive the 90s. But we're a little insular. We've circled the wagons a bit. And I think we really owe it to ourselves and our industry and our future as creators, as well as our readers, to really kind of go out there and not necessarily tell stories for the sake of being esoteric, but something that's got a universal appeal and an emotional core that everyone can relate to.
Right. In essence, you're building your own mythology in that way.
Yeah, that's a great way of phrasing it. Or maybe not to sort of have my head up my own rear too hard. Less of sort of me building my own mythology, and it's really kind of remixing what already is there. I think that sort of universal touchstone, I think, is really helpful. I think it sort of readers can get a little skittish. Especially if they don't, if they don't know who I am, if they don't know what my books are about, but they think, oh, the Wizard of Oz, that I can wrap my head around. And it kind of lets them take that one step further to give us a shot. And then once they see what we're doing, then they get it. And then they get really excited and really invested, in the concepts and the characters and their general arcs.
I just realized I was nodding along as you were saying this, and I'm like,
please do.
Nobody can hear that. Nobody can hear that.
I could hear that.
I could hear it from here. No, thank you. I appreciate it. Sometimes it feels like those are fighting words, and sometimes it feels like I say it and no one's listening. But we just have to. We have to invite more people to the table. We have to build that wider consensus. I think we have to do it creator by creator, but we have to do it for the business as a whole, because otherwise we're not going to have another generation of comics fans when we're competing against TV and video games and Netflix and your iPhone. The thing that comics offer is we offer an emotional journey that you're able to control the pacing of. You don't need, it's not like a video game where you have to like have some level of skill to unlock the story. You just have to have basic literacy. Yeah, I mean, I think the best comics are kind of this real intersection between high concept and emotional engagement. And that's always what I'm trying to shoot for with my books. I joke that I come up with trash concepts that I make you fall in love with. And I think that speaks to I'm always trying to find the emotional core and the emotional beats. And, my first question is, how can I make you cry? My second question is, how can I make you laugh? And then my third question is, how can I make you cheer? And usually those three questions, if I can alternate between them enough, it usually turns the books into something that anybody can enjoy.
Yeah, that.
You're shaking your head again, weren't you?
I'm totally nodding along again.
Ditto.
You'd think after all these years we'd be used to doing this audio-only thing. I don't know.
Well, I still appreciate the nods, so thank you. Thank you for telling me about the nods.
Yeah.
So I can still appreciate that.
Okay, so to twist it back to the OZ, what's the next stretch goal?
Yeah, so right now we're on a stretch goal for Winged Monkey Squadron stickers. Monkey See, Monkey Doom. So we're well on our way for that. We are about midway through between our last stretch goal and the next stretch goal. So yeah, I feel like hopefully we'll hit that in the next few days, and then we can move on to our next stretch goal that I think a lot of people really dig. But yeah, it's the stretch goals that we've had, I think, have been, speaking what we were talking about earlier of how to add value to the book. We've got things like our digital comics extravaganza, which has been unlocked. So we've got PDFs from a dozen indie creators, people like Justin Jordan, Ryland Grant, Frank Gogol, Kevin Eastman, the co-creator of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, has put in his book, the first issue of his book, Drawing Blood. So anybody who throws in $10, which is sort of the minimum tier to get a PDF of the OZ. You're getting 44 pages of the OZ. You're getting the first issue of Spencer and Locke, the first issue of Going to the Chapel. So that's 88 pages just from me. And then you're going to get hundreds of pages from a bunch of other creators. So it's really cool. It's our way of sort of adding more value to your purchase. We're throwing in pinups for the first issue. That's literally the only thing I'm waiting for before I can send this thing to the printer. Is where, like I said, I didn't expect that we were going to blow up as fast as we did. So I had a couple pinups waiting, but not the amount I needed. So we're working on getting those wrapped now, as well as our cameos for the book. We're getting those colored in now. My dad is going to be a guard that gets punched in the face. He doesn't know that yet.
Awesome.
My aunt bought that cameo for him, so he'll find that out soon. We're doing things like pinups. We're looking at enhanced covers. Once we have sort of the final proof ready, we're going to talk with the printer about whether we're going to do UV raised stuff with our cover, or if we're going to be able to possibly offer a metallic option, or maybe a combination thereof. We're going to figure that out shortly. Things like all of our print backers now are getting a comic-sized print from Kira Okamoto, who's super talented. I'm so glad that they were able to give us our Yellow Brick Road Warrior print. And then, like I said, our Winged Monkey Squadron sticker, that's up next. I designed that with Ruben Rojas and his artwork. And we've got at least one more stretch goal waiting in my back pocket that I think fans will be pretty thrilled with. But we might have some more stuff coming. Never say never. Because ultimately, I just want to see how many readers will join us. I really want to build that wider consensus. I want to invite the direct market and the Kickstarter fans to the same table and watch them break bread. And Kickstarter, I think, is a really effective way to do that. I think this is going to be the first of many. I think that Kickstarter is going to be a campaign or a platform, I should say, that I'm going to work with for the rest of my life.
Cool.
Very cool.
Awesome. You still got 2 weeks left to hit those goals, so
Got 2 weeks. I'm going to keep going, and then I'm going to sleep for a week.
Well, and that's something to keep in mind. You say that, and you may be joking. I don't know, but when this thing's over, I mean, you're going to ride the adrenaline until this thing's over, but you got to stop for a day or two at least. After that,
yes.
Just take a break. I mean, please.
I am 1,000% just yes. I'm definitely taking a little bit of time off when this is all said and done. I am doing lettering proofs on another book right now, and I am developing another book that I owe a publisher right now. So yes, that's sort of the next on the agenda, and overseeing art that's coming in for some other projects of varying sizes. But yes, once this is done, I'm giving myself a couple days off. We might be getting a puppy around when this campaign ends, so that might be the next project that we're working on.
Well, you just won Liz over then. That's for sure.
Yes, we're hoping to find out in the next week about our application. So fingers crossed.
Oh, well, good luck.
Thank you very much. This apartment has been too quiet since our dog passed just before COVID. So yes, it's been long enough. We're very excited to have hear the pitter patter of little puppy feet again in our
puppy
our
breath.
Yes,
They're little toe beans. I love their toe beans.
Yeah, exactly that.
Okay.
So to top off the success, are you going to name him Toto?
Right now we're the name we're going for is Friday.
Aw.
So we'll see. I mean, ultimately we got to meet her first. Where our dog, our beloved dog Holly, who passed just during COVID or just before COVID locked everything down. Her groomer has a friend who just had puppies. So these puppies are going to be 8 weeks old tomorrow. So that's when her owner said that she's going to start making decisions. And so we're really hopeful. Just because I've had little Toto terriers my whole life. So yes, I hope we're able to keep the streak going with this little potato looking dog. But so yes, fingers crossed, because that would be very exciting.
Oh man, well, good luck.
Thank you.
I'm always amazed that people have a application process.
Yes.
Here in Texas, we're like doing everything we can to like throw dogs in homes,
Yeah.
So
I think with the pandemic, everything's been a little crazy. We're on a list for a rescue organization for terriers, and even they are like having issues, just because like they've got a surplus of older dogs, and I think anybody who cares for an older dog, a sickly dog, is a hero. Our dog Holly, we nursed her through cancer for her last year.
wow.
And so it's one of those things. It's not something I can emotionally tackle at this juncture. I told my partner, I told her that I can't handle watching another dog die in front of me for another 10 years,
right.
Or so. But I think there's also, I mean, I love dogs. I've had dogs my whole life, and so anybody who cares for an older dog, an elderly dog, a dog who's owners had to, part with them for any reason. No, they're the real heroes here.
Yeah. Takes a special heart.
Yes, agreed.
Just for the record, fuck cancer.
Agreed.
Agreed. Here.
Yeah.
We all I can say is, we're very, very glad, we're grateful for the extra time we had. And we're grateful that Holly really only had one bad day, and she passed in her sleep later that night. So it's these little pups, they carry a big place in your heart, and it hurts to lose them, but I think when you have the whole rest of their lives, we certainly get the better end of the bargain. And I'm very excited in some future work. I've honored Holly in some future work, so I'm excited for people to get to see it.
That's cool. I'd love to see that. Yeah, I had a boxer, and we found out on a Monday he had cancer and was helping him cross the Rainbow Bridge by Thursday. It just very progressive. So.
Yeah, I know it's terrible. Oh, I can hear the puppy in the background.
Yeah. They're about to get crazy. I've got 4 of them in here. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Anything else y'all want to ask?
You want to ask us anything, David?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
If you were a tree, what kind of tree would you be? The only thing I can really say is, first off, just thank you guys for all your support, and then thank you to all your listeners for considering the OZ. Like I said, I think we've worked really hard to justify this book narratively with a real emotional core. It's not edgelord stuff. It's not shock for shock value's sake. And, it's Kickstarter. Every backer matters. Every dollar counts. We want to build that wider consensus. I think you might know the story of Oz, but this is the story of what comes next. So, join us, become a Yellow Brick Road warrior, order the OZ today. And if you want to follow us, you can follow the book, the OZ comic, on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can also visit bit.ly/theozcomic to go directly to our Kickstarter page. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at PeposeD. It's my last name and first initial. Or David Pepose Comics on Facebook. And finally, you can subscribe to Pep Talks, my newsletter, at bit.ly/pepnews.
Of course, we'll have all those links in our show notes as well.
Thank you.
We sure
Definitely.
will.
Thank you, David.
Of course. Thank you guys so
thank
much.
you.
Appreciate
You
it.
guys
Keep me updated on that puppy.
I will let you guys know. You'll see it on my Twitter as soon as we have news one way or the other. I'll let you guys know.
Awesome.
Awesome.
Well, we're
Thank you
pulling
guys.
for you.
Thank you guys. You guys have a great night.
All right.
All right.
Thanks a lot,
You
dude.
too.
Thank you.
Bye.
And we're back. And we'd like to thank David for joining us once again. If you could please, if you're interested, check out his Kickstarter and what's the word I want to say? Contribute. Thank you.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, that word. Yeah, contribute if you can and want to. He would appreciate it. I don't think you'll regret it. I definitely love the concept. The art looks great.
Yeah, there's a bunch of sample pages on the Kickstarter page, so check that out for sure.
Quite a few pages. I was surprised how many pages there are actually on the Kickstarter.
Yeah, you just keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. It's pretty awesome.
So, I mean, that I don't think I've seen that in other projects. So that's cool. So you definitely get an idea of what you're getting into. So yeah, definitely if you want to and can, definitely get involved. You already know it's already funded, so you're just going to be in for the stretch goals, and which are nice stretch goals too. So,
Mm-hmm.
David, thank you once again for joining us. So, just go ahead and do our regular shout outs. Want to thank Pop Goes Culture Podcast Network for allowing us to be part of their network of fellow podcasts. Definitely check them out. We also want you to check out the fine folks who make up Podern Family on Twitter for spreading the word of the fellowship. Easiest way for you to check out their shows is go to Twitter and do a search, #Podern Family. Just scroll through, and whatever catches your attention, click on that link, and please download that episode, and hopefully have a great time listening. Thank you guys as always. Want to thank Manny the Martyr for supplying the music to our podcast. Definitely check out their music. We'll have a link in the show notes as well. And finally, you, dear listener, thank you for downloading and listening to today's episode. We appreciate your support as always and value your feedback. There are several ways you can contact us. If you have any kind of questions, comments, suggestions, complaints, observations, what have you, our email address is email@thefellowshipofthegeeks.net, or you can go to our website and go to the About Us page, and there's a contact form that you can fill out. And while you're on our website, we have a Discord now, so you can join our Discord and you can contact us that way. It's a fun place. We post a lot of news items and conversation topics and some memes and jokes and what have you. So it's a fun little Discord. So you're more than welcome to come join us there. You can reach us through our social media. We're on Facebook, The Fellowship of the Geeks. Obviously, we're on Twitter @Fellowship Geeks. You can follow us and contact us through those avenues. If you like to follow our personal Twitter accounts, you can do that. Mike can be found @MikeyGeek. Liz can be found @LN_geek. And I can be found @TomTCGeek. And from wherever you download our episodes, if you'd be so kind as to rate and review us, it would be awesome. We do appreciate it. Any final thoughts before we say goodbye?
Just thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Appreciate you listening.
Thanks for listening, everybody. We do appreciate your support as always. And until next time, geek on, my friends.
We thank you for listening to the show. Comments, suggestions, and questions can be sent to email@thefellowshipofthegeeks.net. You can follow us on Facebook @The Fellowship of the Geeks and on Twitter @Fellowship Geeks. Until next time,